when my son started getting old enough to where, school choice, right? It's like, okay, well, what are our options for education?
First, you have to identify what are your values, like really, is it academics? Because there's schools out there that's what they're about, right? I mean, George Washington, right? That's their charter. But again, what experience do you want your child to have, right?
Yeah.
Do you want your child to have a neighborhood school experience? I think that's a challenge that's really manifested to me. I was the principal of 3 schools prior to Vista, and we had community, right? Like that's one of the challenges of Vista is that we're drawing from all over Washington County and outside. I mean, we got some kids coming down from Cedar. So how do you create community, right? Like how do you create these opportunities for parents to feel like they belong to Vista as well, right?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the 435 podcast. I have another great episode for you. Today, we have Dr. Justin Blasko with Vista School right here in Southern Utah. It's a charter school, unlike most that you've ever heard of. You're going to enjoy this episode to get a inside look at what charter schools are like in Utah, but specifically one that's been 16 years running and, in my opinion, absolutely crushing it. We hope you enjoy this episode, guys. And also, here's another quick reminder about the Housing Action Coalition event happening at Black Desert on October 30th from 8:30. They're going to be providing breakfast from 8:30 to 1 o'clock. You're going to want to be there if you're interested and know what's happening with housing and the affordability issues that are happening in Southern Utah. The annual forum is this October at Black Desert Resort, so you're going to want to check out the new convention center. And we got panels. I'm going to be hosting a panel with mayors and developers. It's going to be a good one. So if you're interested, make sure you check out the reservation link. If it's not in the description below, it's coming soon. And we'll see you out there, guys. Enjoy this episode. I'm really interested in just your backstory, like where you've been. I know you were at a school in Monroe, Washington before. Yeah. And I'm just curious about like the journey to get to Ivins, Utah and Vista. Yeah.
So, well, first off, I've been an educator for 29 years. So, Weber State, my family's Northern Utah family. So mom and dad are Bonneville High School grads, nice. Way back in the day. Cool. So I spent a little bit of time in Utah, Layton. I was in Davis School District for a little bit. Okay. And then, when I was in 3rd grade, we moved back to Alaska. So there's kind of back and forth, but I was raised in Anchorage, Alaska, graduated from Service High School, and then ended up at Weber State.
Okay.
So played football there and found education. So kind of thought I was going to be computer science, took a C+ class and was like, I can't do this the rest of my life. So
it's interesting to me that athletes tend to be the best teachers and like education, like that seems to be a great shift for athletes going to teaching. And I think there's obviously something there. Yeah. But that's fascinating.
Yeah. So that sent me on the journey. So that was elementary education, which is kind of interesting. Most of my friends, to your point, most of the guys that I know from playing football with them ended up high school, right? Mm-hmm. High school football coaches, kind of that kind of deal. Yeah. One of my buddies up in Northern Utah has won the state championship, Bear River coach, but I really, the great thing about that program at Weber is they got us into classrooms quickly. Right. They wanted us to really make an informed decision. And I really found myself leaning towards that elementary side of things. And so I graduated elementary ed degree. My wife's from Washington. So that's how I ended up in Washington. Okay. She was actually down here with me my last couple of years at Weber and taught in the Ogden School District. She'd already finished her degree. So that was really cool to have, at that time, my girlfriend have a classroom, right? That I could learn things and plug right into her classroom and see those things in action. Have direct action or access to an educator, right? And talk to her about those things. Kind of, you're getting the theory at school, and then you're getting this practical discussion about what the realities are. So,
and then you get to see the interaction with the kids too. Like I volunteered several different times over the last year. So. Just for some people don't know, I have a 3rd grader and a 1st grader at Vista. Yeah. And so I've done, I think I did tutoring for kindergarten and 2nd grade so far. I didn't do first grade. Maybe I got it back. No, yeah, kindergarten and first grade so far. And so like seeing the kids and like seeing the different personalities and all that, and then watching what it actually takes to be a kindergarten teacher is crazy.
Incredible people.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So I can see how there's a big jump between like there's theory, but practice is something totally different.
Yeah, and it's great to be able to be able to apply those things, whatever that is you're studying. To be able to have someone, a mentor, and be able to plug in with a mentor and actually see it. So we ended up in Washington. We were both educators for a while. Started our family, and then at that point, kind of took off down the path of education leadership. I had a great mentor. Brad Stoltz was my principal at the time. Pulled me aside and talked to me about, what are you thinking about your future? What are you thinking about that? And kind of talked me into getting educational leadership master's degree and ended up being a principal pretty quick. So I taught for 5 years and then jumped into the principal. So, education leadership for me started in 2000. So I've been, like I said, this is my 29th year. Did the principal thing for 10 years and then ended up in the central office. That was in Monroe. So HR, human resources, executive director of human resources for 6, and then a few years as assistant soup and then superintendent. And then COVID. And actually
those 2 decades. Those 2 decades, a lot happened.
Yeah. Became, actually was selected as superintendent right before COVID. So in February, I was selected by the school board to be the next superintendent. So that would have been in July, and then COVID happened.
So how many, so the role as superintendent, I don't know. There's so much I don't know. It's multiple schools. It's a whole school district.
It's a district. Yeah. So we had about 6,000 kids at that time. They're a little less now after COVID, but, so we had 5 elementaries, 2 middles, and a high school. So it's good sized district.
Yeah. Not massive, but a good size.
Yeah. Great staff. And then, it was a very purple community, I would say. So there were people that wanted to come back to school. There were people that were scared, fearful.
So if we're sliding into political purple, is that the analogy is like a liberal and conservative value sets? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, originally it was a logging farming community that was growing, right? So the urban spread of Seattle just continues. And so, they just broke through 2 million people in Seattle. And so that spread continues. And so we were starting to get more people move out to the more, what used to be rural, right? Yeah. But now more suburban, right? It's kind of the shift. And definitely had a school board that wanted kids in school. So I got caught in the middle of that. And that's how, you said, how do you end up in Vista? Well, part of it was that experience. Part of it was, something that I'd worked at for a long time. From 2010, I was in Monroe at 2010. And executive director, assistant superintendent, and then superintendent, and then COVID, and then get caught up in that political maelstrom. And I learned a lot of things about life, learned a lot of things about myself. It's definitely one of those chapters in my life where you look back and you're like, would I like to rewrite that? I think probably a year and a half ago, my answer would have been a strong yes. Now that I've been at Vista for a year, I'm really starting to listen to those people that talk to me and you get a lot of platitudes in those situations in your life, like when the wheels come off the bus and you're kind of picking things up. But a lot of people said, at some point you're going to look back and you're going to be thankful for this. And that was really hard to hear in that moment. But there have been distinct. So
these are people that care about you, like giving you feedback and saying like, hey man, I know this is painful at the moment, but you're going to look back and there's going to be some good lessons.
Yeah. And, I can honestly say that there's no way I'd be at Vista if that event wouldn't have happened, right? Like if things would have gone well, we would have rode that out as long as we could have. Average superintendent lasts about 3 years in the United States of America. So, it's a tough gig. Yeah, it's a tough gig. And full kudos to those people that are really working on it. And I think there's
some jobs we want people to quit and they won't. Like, how do we make that the scenario for a congressperson or something like that? You know what I mean? Where you're like, you can only do it for 3 years, then you got to get out.
You should just get it. Yeah. and the thing we know is leadership stability. There's just oodles and oodles of research demonstrating when the leadership is stable, good things happen for kids, right? teachers thrive. We have systems in place. Systems usually take 3 to 5 years if you're a change management person, right? You think about the theories behind that. And so it's really important to have stable leadership. And I think that's a challenge right now for public education. We have boards that are, looking at things in a manner that I think are different than they ever have. And they're just making quick decisions. And I'm not saying that has to do with my situation. I'm saying that
in general,
globally, that's a tough job. I really take my hat off to those people that step forward. And, I think there's only about 13,000 districts in the United States. So if you think about that, it's a really tight group of people that are really working hard. And been fortunate to work with a lot of really great people, really smart educators that truly their hearts are aligned to kids, right? And that's what I think for any educator, you have to have a heart for kids. You've been in school, you've been a tutor, right?
Yeah.
You just gave props to kindergarten teachers. I will give full props to all teachers.
Yeah.
To get up day in and day out and bring the energy and bring the enthusiasm, bring the love that you have to have for kids. It's just something that I think we need to celebrate more as a society. We need to really hold up a lot of respect to the teachers that we have and what they're doing for our kids.
So I want to dig into the backstory a little bit, but without as the director, maybe describe your position as the director of Vista, because one of the thoughts I get this all the time is how is Vista different than others? But I was going to talk about the systems in general, but let's just dig into charter schools and Vista as a school model, and how is that different than if the kids were going to Crimson Elementary or something like that?
Yeah, this is great. And so, I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert, man. I learn something every day. Every day I'm learning more about this. I was on the phone this week with a person from the state, and she was explaining to me ins and outs of things that were very different than my experience in Washington State compared to Utah. And I just thanked her profusely. She spent an hour with me, and that's what I found too. So charter schools is about the end of the 90s when the legislators here in Utah decided that, we need to look at this charter movement. And Utah wasn't the first, so they were able to learn from other states, and they tried to take the best components of those. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it started out with about 9 schools, right? Okay. 9 charter schools. And that was kind of that first wave, like, let's do this. And so charter schools in Utah are public schools, publicly funded. They get a little slice of, like, for example, here in Washington County, we get a little slice of the levy that Washington County District has. We get a portion of that, small portion of that. Again, we get WPU, weighted pupil units. So for every kid, we get the designated amount that the legislators have allocated for students in the state of Utah. And the difference between a charter school and another school in town is that we are our own LEA. There's another acronym, and if you've been around education at all, we love acronyms.
Yeah, right? There's a couple episodes I've ranted about acronyms. I hate them so much. There's
a good shirt, Anti-Acronym Association, AAA.
So
you probably need to get that. Yeah,
AA.
Yeah. So local education agency, right? LEA, and that's if you look up in the state code, you're going to see that a lot. Charter schools are their own LEAs. So we have our own board. We have a 5-member board. I am the director. So if you were comparing, and this is an apples to oranges comparison, but if you compared us to a school district, that would be like the superintendent, except it's not at a charter school, right? Like we wear a lot of hats, and it's a really cool job. I've really, one of my mentors in the circumstance we were describing before really asked me, when were you the happiest as an educator? And I said, elementary principal. I mean, elementary principal is a good gig.
Yeah.
It's really neat. You have a group of elementary teachers, you have your staff, everybody's charging for kids and making sure they're learning. And, that was my answer. And in this job at Vista, I get to do that. There's components of being the director where I'm still a principal, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of today's a great example of that. I have a board meeting tonight. And so, this morning, I was a principal.
You were standing out a drop off. I saw you drop
off, right? Pick up, we do all those things. And then tonight I'll meet with my board and we'll talk about, strategic planning. We'll talk about those pieces. We'll talk about what can we do better for kids at Vista. So it's kind of a synthesis of a lot of jobs that I've done, right? Which, I think I would guess that was probably what attracted the board to my application to Vista. So, again, charter schools, we are our own entities. So most, if not all charter schools, 501c3s. So we have our own identity, we do our own business. Vista, we're about a $13.5 million operation. We have about 160-ish employees. We've got over 60 teachers and everybody else, right? Maintenance, we've got bus drivers, we've got food service, custodians, paraeducators, teaching
It's a
aides.
mini school district.
It is.
It's a mini school district.
Is.
The first thing that I think of as you were talking about it, and I hadn't thought about it in these terms yet, I feel like it's a hyper efficient school system.
It is.
It's hyper efficient. It's
I love that.
we're gonna cut out what don't we need, and what is essential, and then how do we do a good job doing that, right? It's like it's almost like Six Sigma, right? Where you just like cut out all the efficient. What's the most efficient way, right? Is that fair to say?
I would say that's probably been the most rewarding part of this is how nimble we can be.
Yeah.
Right. Like if we've got an issue, if we've got a problem, we don't have to coordinate throughout the district to make sure all the right heads are in the room. Like we can quickly look around the school and say, okay, we need these people here. Let's make sure these people are here and let's get them there. And that's very beneficial. I think that's very beneficial.
I think it is too, because it also makes the other schools have to be agile as well, because if they're not providing the services or the expectations from the parents and the students aren't getting what they need, this is another alternative, which I think is a brilliant part of it. Which I don't know how charter schools have grown, but I think historically in California, charter schools weren't necessarily seen as the better schools because at some capacity, there was something about how the standards for teachers were lower at a charter school or something along those lines. But I don't know if any of that's true. But to me, it's competition to the, one size fits all school system.
Yeah.
This is definitely not one size fits all.
No. And I think, I think that's probably the legislative intent, right? Like how do we create these incubators for innovation, right? Like that's something that is a constant. So I've really benefited Utah Association of Public Charter Schools, great organization, the Utah State Charter Association, right? Like the USBE portion that's assigned to charters, both of them very helpful, very passionate individuals that want to do good things for kids.
Yeah.
And man, having that opportunity to have that recharge, you get up, you put your shoes on and you go after it. And it's really exciting. It's really, I am blessed to be at Vista. Vista's a special place.
Let's dig into that. What's different about it? Because obviously I know I'm like, I love the model because I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I thought about, what was it that I struggled with in school, and I couldn't sit still. Sure. And I wanted to go on to the next thing. And then if something got my attention, I was fully in.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, I needed a reset. I just didn't have the capacity for that. And I think there's growing numbers of kids that are that way. But even as we get into adulthood, that's how the world has almost become ADD. You know what I mean? Right? in kind of a way.
Yeah.
And so
I'm turning off both my devices when I come in here, right? Like
the anxiety that a lot of people get, I think it's not necessarily their fault, but it's like we're having to adapt to this world that's very difficult to adapt to.
Yeah.
But the model at Vista seems where you're starting kids early on learning how to adapt to things that are not as cookie cutter, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And part of our model, so if we think about our academic side of the house, we long ago, and this is the 16th year for Vista. So it's
established.
It's an established charter school in Utah. Just finished nearly just over a $16 million innovation with our proscenium theater and our science labs and our tech lab up top.
The theater is unbelievable. I love going to shows there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, we got I just heard today, I can't tell you yet, but you'll be one of the first to know. We got a good show coming, and we had the BYU ambassadors last year, and it was just people come in and they just realize we got a special thing, and kindergartners are performing on that stage, and so, but to your point, to back up and talk about what you're talking about. So so if you think about our academic model, our kids, as soon as they get into first grade, don't just have one teacher. Like they're moving. They're going to specialists. They're going to they have a English language arts teacher and a math teacher and a science teacher. And so all of that is providing them these different contexts, and they're getting to interact with different adults. And where we have the Vista way, and we're really working on that this year, all school behavioral model. So we have the standard, but then each teacher has their own way, their nuance of how they're going to present that in your classroom. And as a child, I think I would have benefited from that. I think I'm probably much the same wired as you are. What's that next thing? Where are we going to next? And I think that does help a lot of our kids. Yeah. So, we have the same challenges as school districts. We're having the same situations from the leftover, our kindergartners this year and first graders, like they're the COVID kids, right? They were young and impressionable, right, when that happened. And so, there's some the language we use now, there's some dysregulation, and we see that. I spent a lot of time in kindergarten today, as did a couple of my other assistant principals, and just really trying to get kids to have that understanding of hey man, we're here to learn. Your job right now is to learn. So I think that's one component, and then as you were talking about, we have a lot of choice, and I think that's what blows me away about Vista, right? Like, orchestra starts in third grade. If you want, and Linda DeLuca, she's been here for a long time. Master's degree from Juilliard, like.
She's so good.
Your third grader, like that's your experience.
The strings during intermission at the Nutcracker last year. Yeah. I was like, this is a whole show in itself.
Yeah.
They're just playing. It was so beautiful just out in the hallway. Yeah. I was like, this is awesome. This is like another amazing show in between. In intermission. It was so excellent.
Yeah, and then the Nutcracker.
If you want to pull the mic a little bit closer too, just to
Thank you.
make sure.
Sorry about that.
No, it sounds a little better. But the Nutcracker was awesome. But so Juilliard, and to back up one step too, it's kindergarten through ninth grade.
Kindergarten through ninth.
Okay, so in third grade now, it's almost a track system, and I think this is similar to a lot of European schools do this as well, where you start to track students out based off strengths. Yeah, and in third grade is kind of where things start tracking in two different directions, right?
Yeah, they start to have a little more options to be able to experience those things. Fourth grade is really like, fourth grade's kind of like, okay, now you start to see where the propensities, like what are kids really aligned to, right? And so they start to pick those. But we talk about Linda, but I could talk about every track. I could talk about VEX. I could talk about, technology. I could talk about those pathways.
What's VEX again?
VEX is a robotics.
That's a
robotics program. Last year we sent 2 teams to Worlds down in Texas. The first year they ever did VEX, and this is just beginner's luck maybe. I don't know. They took 7th in the world.
That's so crazy.
The team, they'd never done VEX before at Vista. Yeah, and the team went down to Texas, and they didn't know any better, so they placed 7th. Right. Yeah. So I had a kid tell me this week, he's like, Dr. Blasko, we're doing it. We're doing it. And every year the game changes, right? So it's engineering design, it's robotics. But what VEX does, and that's the league, international league, they design a different challenge every year. So the kids are starting to learn that challenge now. They're having to take tests on the rules, right? To understand the rules of the game this year. And that's all happening. Our kids built sheds last year, right? We built 2
in the parking lot. I saw that. I loved it.
Yep, frame up 2 sheds, and so that's a pathway that happens every other year. You think about just the performing arts. You think of the visual arts. It's the power box right outside of Vista. The wrap around that was all student design. It's just really incredible, and I think to your point, it's like what would that look like in a district? Like that would probably be multiple schools, right?
Yeah.
Not one place.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to decide as a parent, my kid's going to go to the tech school.
Yeah.
Right. My kid's going to go to the art school.
Yeah. We have like a tech specific school.
Right.
And that's great.
Yeah.
For up in the upper levels of education, it seems like. But in that elementary, our brains aren't fully developed. Like we could think that this is the right way, but are we actually right, or are we off?
Right.
My son, he's in third grade. in first intro to technology, his very first class, they did a word association, and it was a this or that.
Yeah.
And then every kid mapped out their own brain, and he was so excited to bring it home to me. Awesome. He wrapped it up and put my name on it, and he said, "Dad, I got something for you." And I opened it up, and I was like, this is the best present ever, because I'm kind of a geek about brain development, and I've been talking to him since he can remember about his I call it the downstairs brain, or his reptile brain, and his upstairs brain. And he's connecting all these things. He doesn't quite understand, but emotional reactions. I was like, this isn't exactly what you're feeling. You just don't have the words to describe it, right? So I'm trying to give him some of these like small tools early on, but they don't fully get it. But then for him to get to third grade, and I'm getting choked up about it because he connected all those things, and I think it's awesome. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. I get choked up. I just think about these opportunities for kids. I've had to stop a couple times, talking to the staff, talking to the faculty, and just, it's like I said, it's kudos to them every day bringing it, and that's what you got to do. So, you think about the challenge we have 175 days with your children, right? And everybody else's children that comes through Vista. Mm-hmm. So, 180 days of school in our system. 5 of those, we model Washington County's calendar, and 5 of those are professional development days. We try to maximize everything we can on those days, right? Like that was part of my talk last year to our faculty, was really like we've chosen to have these days instead of school days. We've chosen to focus on ourselves, which I think is appropriate. I think that's something that's missing in U.S. education, public education, is the opportunities we have to really professional development, to really be able to get inside of each other's classrooms and do that. And I'm trying to figure out how to work that into Vista, right? How can we take these things that we know? And what's really cool about this conversation we're having, you're totally geeking me out here, is we can do that at Vista.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no one to stop us. There's not a bureaucratic wall that we're going to bump into. Like we just have to pivot, and we got to figure out how to make this work, and we got to do that. And I'm surrounded by educators that want to do that. And I think you're asking me what the difference with Vista is. I think part of the difference with Vista is that I can't think of a person that doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I see the teachers all the time. I talk to them. They all love it there too. Yeah. I mean, I've heard in any leadership management, talking about management and leadership and having to change over. Every time you go into an organization, there's going to be a certain portion of the employees that are part of the organization that don't like the changes or aren't comfortable with what those changes are. And that's going to happen everywhere. But, generally speaking, you can tell that all the teachers just love it there.
Yeah. I really appreciate you saying that, because that was a big, we had a big bump last year, and as we started to settle in, you're right. I mean,
every organization goes through that. Anytime there's big
put
leadership
up with me, right? Like I'm the director now, and I was just explaining to some teachers this afternoon. It's like, you're bumping into my bias. You know? And thankfully I'm 29 years in, and I'm able to use that language. Hey, I appreciate you talking to me. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, and so I'm trying to be that leader that we can have those collaborative conversations. I mean, ultimately, my responsibility is to make sure things are clicking and that students are achieving. Yeah. And, that's something that we're working on. We've got a new math material. We got a new math adoption. I'm psyched about that. It's kindergarten through 9th grade. We don't have transitions, which we've had ever since Vista has been in service. There's been a transition between elementary and middle. Now we have a K-9 program. So students that start at Vista, the material is going to be the same. And I think that's going to take away some barriers for us. It's a big lift, and I just appreciate my math staff, really rolling up their sleeves. I saw them in the classroom the other day. I was walking through, I don't even know what time it was. It had to been, it was definitely after 4:00, and there were 3 teachers in a classroom, and they were, working on math, talking about, well, this is what 5th grade has, and this is what 4th grade, so don't be too concerned about that, because that's going to spiral into 5th grade. And those are just awesome conversations, right? Yeah. I mean,
when you can start thinking about not 1 year at a time. Yeah. And then the kids, the assumption is you get the kid in kindergarten, they're going to go, and I know there's a drop off between 8th and 9th grade, which you talked about in one of the director meetings that I sat in. Yeah. I just wanted to get a feel for what that director meeting looks like, which I thought it was awesome that I had the opportunity to go and just listen in, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like wanting to ask questions, but I gotta sit there to myself.
Yeah.
But
sign up, ask questions. There's a time that you can talk in those things.
So the idea of, every teacher, the kids go through, and because the kids are going from teacher to teacher all the time, it's the teachers have a collective responsibility of each individual kids, right? And this teacher has this student for 2 years actually, right? So like my son's had a couple of teachers for several years where language arts has changed a couple of times, math's changed a couple, but other ones there's continuity in.
Yeah.
And then each kid, this idea of like no kid left behind and all these things. Well, I mean, ultimately, as we grow, whether we make it or not, you still got to go operate out into the world, right? And so at some capacity, what are we doing the best job for the kids? And that's why I like the model so much, because there's that collective, growth of the kids through each year.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So that math, what was the impetus? I kind of know a little bit about Common Core and how Bill Gates funded it. And this is all, don't quote me on any of this, but this is just how I remember it in my head. So correct me if I'm wrong. So Bill Gates, doubles down on Common Core math. This big study goes out and says it's not working. And he goes, no, it is working. All your teachers suck at teaching it. And he puts like another $1.6 billion or something into the program and says, no, we're going to do it this way. And this is the way it needs to be done. Is that right? Am I hearing that the right way?
Oh, I've tried to stay out of that. What I look at is I look at the grade level expectations and I think about that through an educational lens. And I think, does that make sense? Should third graders be able to do this? Right. And for the most part, I don't really, the Utah state standards are, very aligned to Common Core standards. And so what we need to make sure is that students know and are able to do those things by the end of those grade levels, right? Because we know that then that's going to build on the next grade level. So yeah, I know there's controversy about that, but as an educator, like what we need to focus on is what you said. Are we preparing students for the economy? We don't even know what that's going to look like. Right?
I know.
Like think about our life. Like think about I'm getting old now, man. Like I look back and I think, holy cow, like
every generation looks back and like, this isn't how I went to school. Every generation said that, right? But that's kind of that's what happens. And so we don't really have a crystal ball to think in the future saying, are we perfectly preparing our kids? We're going to do the best we can in the moment that we got it.
Yeah. I think mathematics is going to play a huge part of that, right? Like, I think if we boiled that down to like a nugget, what is mathematics? Mathematics is problem solving. And I think, when I look at my life and the experiences that I've had in my life, what's important? Problem solving, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to look at a situation and see logically, what do I need to do first? What do I need to do next? What do I need to do? Where's that cycle where cycle of inquiry is my language. Like, are we looking at that in a way of like, what's going well? What do we need? You said Six Sigma earlier, right? Like what are those processes that we're teaching kids to be able to logically look at those things? And obviously there's going to be technology tools to help them do that, right? I mean, we look at AI now, we look at how, and we're grasping that. We're trying to get our hands around like, how do we integrate that at Vista? We're known as a tech school. Well, we better be talking about these things that are coming, and we're trying to get smarter about that. But I think, on a baseline, we want students to leave if wherever that is, if that's 8th grade, if that's 9th grade, that they're leaving and they have those skills, right? That wherever they're going to walk into next, whatever that choice is next, they walk in prepared to be able to take that on and continue to thrive. We want them to thrive with us. We want them to thrive as they move on from Vista. So we really, what was great about the selection of iReady, I just dropped a name. Sorry about that. I don't know if I should do that on the podcast.
I don't know. I think that,
Maybe
the program's called iReady, right?
Yeah,
I'll take credit for it.
Good. But it was really teacher selected. So that was really a teacher process. We took a couple of weeks. People were trying things out. And that was really important to me because that was part of, you asked, I knew there was a bump in the road. What was that about? That there was some discontent and discord about what we had, who chose it. There's a lot of questions about that. Obviously that was before I got there. And so as I'm looking at it, it's like, well, we just need teachers to become, here's what we know in education. And this is John Hattie. This is Dr. Hattie's work. And this came out in about 2009 and it's been replicated multiple times, not just by him, I think he's in his third run on this, but here's what we know. Collective teacher efficacy, 1.4 effect size, right? When you have a place where teachers believe in themselves and they believe in their colleagues and our abilities to impact students, great things happen for kids.
Yeah.
And bottom line, that's what I'm trying to do at Vista, right? Yeah. And we've got those people. I mean, I have those teachers. And so how we continue to work together and take these opportunities when we identify these opportunities, this isn't going as well as we want it to for kids. Okay, what do we need to do to make that go better for kids? Mm-hmm. That's what we're working on. We know that, right? I mean, that's been established, this collective teacher efficacy. It's what we need to have to continue to move kids. And so that's what's exciting. And I think the baseline, the foundation of Vista, like we're going to do that. We're pushing that way. We're going that way.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I know, thinking of different curriculums, before the start of the year, so I worked with my son on math all year.
Nice.
Because he was so far behind in math. And I was far behind on math when I was in that age range as well. And part of it is the attention thing. But another part of it is I think every kid has a certain level of comprehension. Mm-hmm. And what we kind of noticed is that because there's a lot of help, he quickly learned, like, if I don't do it, the teacher's going to come over and help me do it.
Sure.
Or I'm going to get some help from like somebody else. So if I'm not paying attention, if we're not in the class, my wife volunteered almost every once a week for sure in math specifically. So we could watch and just see how things were unfolding. And it's not anything the teacher's doing wrong. It's just my son's figured out this little loophole in the system where he doesn't actually have to memorize this thing because he's going to get help. And the tests, he doesn't feel like the impact of like, if you get a bad grade on this, like this is going to have consequence or anything like that. And so we're trying to close that loop. So all summer he was like, you got to write 1 to 50. I need you doing math facts all summer long. Yeah. And so, when we looked at the new math program, I just started looking up different math programs. There's tons of different curriculums. There's tons of different tools.
It's a big industry.
And so narrowing down one versus the other, my argument against homeschooling and some of these like really new age types of teaching for kids, I'm like, I get the appeal to that, but there's still a group of humans that are way better at this than me. And I can't be arrogant enough. Sorry, this thing's going off. I didn't even know it was in silence.
I hoped it wasn't mine.
I know it was mine the whole time. There's a group of humans that are for sure better at this than I am. And how am I going to be arrogant enough to say I can do a better job teaching my kid than somebody else who's better at this? Yeah. And so that's where, I just settled on like, I'm pretty sure they know this is going to be the best one for them. And we just got to lean into it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where we're at, right? Like implementation dip, all those things, change management. And at the same time, we've got people that's their passion. Their passion is teaching math. And that's what's really cool is what we talked about, right? Like that goes all the way down to first grade. We have first grade math teacher. We have a first grade math teacher. That's her gig. Yeah. All the way up to our ninth grade. And so, and it's cool to have those people in those places and to be able to be a part of those conversations and hear them. And we're pinging back and forth and solving problems. It's just the students are at the center of our work. And I've been in some roles and been in some places where there's times where you pause and you look around at the educator and you're like, what are we really talking about right now? Like we've gotten really far away from kids, and I've yet to have that experience at Vista. Yeah. Like every day we're working for kids. And so it's inspiring. I mean, it's motivating. It's inspiring.
Do you think that has something to do with just the charter model, or do you think that is the alternative? What you said is we're getting off track. Do you think that's part of what, like the general education system, if you go from the federal level down to the state, then into the individual districts, do you feel like we've just gotten bloated at some portion, and then we've because I find it really weird that politics sneaks in to this category where it doesn't seem like it should be there. Right. But is it because the system's designed that way, do you think?
Well, and I think it's challenging when you think of these big systems. I mean, you think about Washington County, what are they, third largest district in the state of Utah, right? Like that's an intense organization. Like let's just think about this. How many miles do their buses drive every day?
Yeah, it's probably
thousands, right? Yeah. Like thousands. I had the good fortune of working with Dr. Ken Hoover, and he had spent time in Jeffco system in Colorado, right? Similar system to Utah, where the counties are the systems, and he was telling me that that at one point they calculated how many miles the buses went, and it was like to the moon and back, right? Like million, like just crazy.
Yeah.
And that's one component of that system, right?
Yeah.
And making sure kids safely get to and from school, hugely important, right? But is that taking away from the focus of students and well-being and learning and continuing to progress? Probably the bureaucracy, silos. I think that's something that you see in a lot of organizations. You have this particular department and they're about this, and that's what they're going to do, right? We don't have to worry about sports. We don't have to worry about athletics. We don't have to worry about those things. That's a whole nother component of other
I know systems. I'm going to go out on a limb. You don't have to agree with me, but yeah. I think sports is fundamentally cancer to the education system.
It's hard.
I think, but, at the university level, have at it. Yeah. But the fact that it impacts high school the way that it does, and it funnels so many millions of dollars.
It's a lot.
It seems like it's so corrupt to me. It just seems like you're so far off track of what is the goal. Yeah. Sports should not be this thing. It's like, I don't know, but there's you could fall off into the conspiracy theory on it, but money is so important to those organizations because it's just sports where if you could just take that piece out, like how much more can we get done? Like how much better can we be?
Friday Night Lights is a math competition, right? Like what, how do we get there? Probably not going to get there. But,
I watch the Olympics. I'm like, do we care really about how many gold medals? Is that really something we have to really hang our hat out just because of the sports? I just don't understand that. But I mean, that's an unpopular opinion. Absolutely. I guarantee there's people listening that are like, no, sports are important.
And it saved me, I mean, football saved me. My coach, I mean, there's some choices I was making in high school that having those people that cared about me and were like, what are you doing right now? Well, nothing. Well, you're going to wrestle because, he was my offensive line coach, was the head wrestling coach. And
there's a lot of education in those sports, right?
Sure.
And so I can see how there's this. It's just a weird slippery slope that we just slid off into.
Yeah, and I think kids need connections with school, right? Mm-hmm. Is that an adult? Is that a trusted adult? Is that a program? Is that
team.
Sports? Right? Like having that connection, for a lot of people brings them back, and so there's value that. The point though that you and I are talking about is, does that take the focus away from what the mission is, right? Like what's
the goal?
Keep the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Like keep the main thing, the main thing.
Right.
And so, I think that's a challenge, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of, you can go out there and find this on the internet, like what we used to expect teachers to do and what we expect teachers to do now. Right.
Yeah.
And there's tons of those memes out there.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I think, the larger districts are having to take all that, right? They're having, here's a cool thing about Vista that was, it was a surprise to me. And there's probably bias in me saying this. Last year, we were 37% free and reduced students at Vista. So, this year I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm pretty confident that we're at some point in the next couple of years we're going to be over this 40% mark, which will make Vista a Title I school.
Okay.
So federal government Title I is learning intervention, math, reading, and their cutoff, their base of that is 40% is a school-wide title program. And so there's a lot of ways to slice that. But what's really awesome about that is the experience that your children are having at Vista. Other families, with less socioeconomic means and everything, are choosing to bring their children to Vista. And I believe it's because of those programs that you and I are talking about, right? The orchestra program, the fine arts program, the visual arts, the dance, the robotics, like all of these choices we have. If you're at a school and that's not offered at that school, well, you got to figure out how to get your kids in that, right? You're going to go to a ballet company. You're going to go, where, you're going to pay for a tutor to do the orchestra. Whereas at Vista, that can happen at school, right? And so
I'm going to go out on a limb and propose an alternative.
Yeah.
cost of living in St. George is too freaking high.
Yeah.
And young families with kids can't afford to live here very well.
Yeah.
And so they fall into these categories because we're cutting out, the opportunities for a lot of those families.
Sure.
And it's a growing portion of our community, unfortunately, because of a lot of the, economic situations that are going on across the globe.
Sure.
I think that might have some factor into it. But I think your point too, though, is that, being of lower socioeconomics, and you put your kid in this school and you're paying attention and you want them to succeed, and you see maybe it's bullying because they don't have, this backpack or this thing, or they're not part of this family or that family, and they start to feel like they don't fit in. Is there an alternative to where they can fit in? And I think for certain, Vista is that way. Everybody wears uniforms. I went to a private military school for high school. So at 15, I went to a boarding school. And so I got a totally different education than 99% of, America. And my wife and I, it's like, I just see education totally different than she sees it, because she came up just standard public schools. And so I'm like, no, there's a lot of value in this uniform thing. Everybody's on an equal playing field.
That's
and
exactly
it's a meritocracy at its finest when you can cut out some of these cultural things that we insert into schools. And so I can see how a lot of those kids would be choosing Vista. I can see that as well.
Yeah. And it's fantastic, right? I mean,
it's good.
If we're able to, we're doing it right now with 37% from last year, but to have that designation, I think that's a point of pride for me. It's like, we're that could be a game changer. And obviously, having done this for a long time, education for a long time, I do believe it's the equalizer. I appreciate that word. I really believe that, blood, sweat, and tears and leaving it on the line every day for kids, that makes a huge difference, right? I mean, we are changing trajectories of kids' lives. And I see teachers do that every day at Vista. And there's not a day at Vista I haven't been inspired. I've said that earlier, and I'm going to say it again. I'm blessed to be there. The people that are there are there for the right reasons. And with those ingredients, we're just going to continue to improve. I don't think there's ever a school out there that's like, oh, we did it. Right.
There's no finish line.
You think of college, like we talked about, you think of Harvard and Yale's and all those things. They're still getting better, right? They're still improving their craft. And, that's what we're doing. The community in St. George, the charter community, there's just some really, really neat people, really, really neat educators that just have this passion that's just infectious. You get around these people that are leading charters or part of charters, and you're right. I think we're approaching 140, if not 140 charter schools in Utah. And if you think about that, that's not a lot, right? It's a really finite slice of what's happening for kids, and there's amazing things happening in these schools. So we're one of about I think it's 138 this year, 139. But it's really neat to see people that are able to pursue what those charters are trying to carry out. And that's neat, right? Like our charter, we believe that academics is going to improve when students are able to exercise their choice. And those choices happen to be technology and arts. Yeah. And, it's a special place for kids. And I just appreciate leading that.
So one of the things, I struggled to do was like when my son started getting old enough to where, school choice, right? It's like, okay, well, what are our options for education? What would you suggest? Because if you go online and you say, school test scores, like what's the best school, if you Googled best school in St. George, Utah, this is not going to show up there.
No, we're not there yet.
Yep. And at the same time, I looked at it like, okay, so their standardized test scores don't match. I said, but what does that mean? Like, I don't know if I'm just using that as my standard that somebody else gave me. Yeah. What did that, it didn't tell me about anything about school. So I found it really difficult to actually research schools and see, okay, what are some of the options? What would you suggest if somebody's coming here or new, or they have kids coming up? How should they be thinking about picking a school for their kid?
Yeah. I think, you definitely, and that's a
That's a tough
Boy,
question.
that's a tough one.
Sorry, I was really hoping you had an easy
we
answer.
should almost do another podcast on
I
that
know.
one. We'll bring in a couple more people.
I normally do 2 hours, so
Yeah,
we're cutting this one tight.
I think as a family, and this sounds like the process that you went through as a family, is first you have to identify what are your values, like really, is it academics? Because there's schools out there that's what they're about, right? I mean, George Washington, right? That's their charter, right? Like that's their charter, and you
high expectations.
You look at those assessment results, and they're achieving at high levels, but. If that's your choice, then I think you have to look at that. Of course, that's what the realtors are going to talk about, right? I mean, that's what comes up. But again, what experience do you want your child to have, right?
Yeah.
Do you want your child to have a neighborhood school experience? I think that's a challenge that's really manifested to me. I was the principal of 3 schools prior to Vista, and we had community, right? Like that's one of the challenges of Vista is that we're drawing from all over Washington County and outside. I mean, we got some kids coming down from Cedar. So how do you create community, right? Like how do you create these opportunities for parents to feel like they belong to Vista as well, right? And that's easier in a neighborhood school. So if that, that's something that parents or families are going to have to look at and say, okay, so the kids from the neighborhood, they're going to be at that school, right? And I'm assuming with your children's their experience, like probably not.
Yeah, there's a couple kids that are nearby in Ivans, but we all found each other.
Yeah,
right? Like
you find each other.
And one of the things I'll give you a lot of credit for is I hadn't thought about it in those terms. I'm like, oh yeah, I could see why they do these little things like the game, like the festival that you guys had at school. The fall festival was so awesome this last year. Like they did it at the park the one year before, but last year they did it right at school, and I thought it was amazing because everybody's just right there. It definitely felt like a community. I got to meet a bunch of parents I hadn't normally been able to meet, and so that. I think you're doing a good job, but that's a tough job to do.
Yeah. And our partners, our PTO partners, they're all about that. Yeah. Right. So
they got a great Facebook community. Like the PTO on Facebook is super active and helpful.
Had 25 people at the meeting yesterday. So they put it at the end of the day yesterday. And so, they're pivoting too, and they're trying to really kind of respond to this. So, but that's another thing I think as a family, you got to look at and say, okay, transportation, holy cow, you and I were talking about carpool.
Yeah.
Whoa. Like,
yeah, dude, it's not easy.
I had no idea about carpool and
it dominated the city council meeting in Ivans the other day. I was in there. I was like, why are we talking about this? The parking and traffic for like 20 minutes a day. Seriously, we're really that worried about it at the city? I was like, come on, guys.
Usually,
it's not an easy thing to do.
They know that, they got to give us about 10 days. And trust us,
let us shake
some
it
of that,
out.
we gamify that, right? We're texting back and forth, 318, we had a 318 this week. And so it's exciting. Parents get trained up, kids, we're working on making sure kids are looking for you. But, that's a thing, right? If, choosing choosing a charter, you're responsible for transportation, right? We have 2 buses, but that's with 1,100 plus kids, that's not a lot of transportation.
It's not.
So that's something else. And then I just think programs like what, you can look at a Washington County school. Okay. So here's the elementary, here's the neighborhood elementary, here's what the middle level is, here's what the high school is. And if you look at the programs and most of the websites have like what's happening in the schools, right? I mean, that's why we just invested in our website, it's a little clunky right now. We're still working through that,
that's
but we're trying to highlight those things so that prospective parents can look at those things and have a better understanding of what those programs look like at Vista. So, I think you got to do some research. I think site visits are important,
for sure. It's extra work, but at the end of the day, if you're just going off of what you see on the internet, it's not always exactly what you think it's going to be like. And I've heard a couple of times where kids started at George Washington and they end up over at Vista, because
and vice
it's just
versa.
different. And vice versa. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like some people try us and they're like, no, this isn't what we thought it was going to be.
It's not the best fit. Right.
And I think that's the other thing about what's neat about school choice is you have the ability to do that too as a family, right? If it's not working, there's other choices out there. And we don't want you to be miserable. Like if you're unhappy, like, make a different choice. That's hard, and obviously our budget is, as we talked about earlier, I mean, it's definitely driven by enrollment. But at the same time, we want kids to thrive. And if there's discord in the family, that kids are going to, I mean, you sense that as a kid, I sense that as a kid, like that's going to come through the child too, And so, if the parents aren't happy, like, I think it's gotta be meaningful, and you've got to be, there's a level of satisfaction that needs to be achieved for all of that to work out well. And so I think, I think what you said, you've got to do some research. You got to do that. And I think a site visit is really important. Like how does it feel when you walk in? Are you greeted? Do you feel welcomed? That's a challenge now, because we've got all this House Bill 84 and all the security and safety and everything's coming from the legislators. And it's important. It's very important. It's hugely important. And it's unfortunate that we have to spend so much time and money on that, but it's necessary. We need to ensure that our kids are safe. Some of that has rubbed people the wrong way because they've been lifelong Vista people and they've had access, and here's Blasko coming in and changing this. And it's like, it's not really me, but ultimately at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the students are safe and comply with those regulations, not just comply with the regulations, but to do that in a meaningful way that's making sure kids are safe. But, how do you feel? Did you get a good vibe from that? I mean, a lot of, there's probably places that other people have recommended to you that you've gone and had a meal at, and you're like, I'm never going back there again. Yeah. Service was terrible, whatever. Exactly. I think that's probably not as cut and dry for schools, but we're working, element of that we're working hard to make sure that experience, and my staff, my front office staff, we talk about that a lot. Like how do we interact with people in a respectful way? So one of the changes is we're asking parents to show us their IDs as they check their kids out.
Nice,
right? Standard operating procedure, and we have relationships with people, right? Like we recognize each other. And at the same time, it's like, but I
have to make this a process.
We have a process to keep kids safe.
And they should rest in that. Know that, like, I'm checking yours because if anybody else comes in and tries to get your kid, I'm going to do the same thing to them. Right.
And so we'll call you if they're not on the list.
Exactly. Because if somebody walks in and they're scouting it out and they notice you're not doing that, and then all of a sudden they think they can get away with it. Right. It's a challenge. It's, I don't blame you for doing that. IDs are a touchy topic. It's people and IDs. It's like, what? Why is it such a bad thing to prove you are who you are? Like, I don't understand.
We want your kid to go home with you or whomever you've identified on your list to make sure that they can go home to. So
that's such a funny topic, but it's, I know you got a board meeting to get to. This is a fun conversation. I want to keep having it. I think it's important for parents to get involved in their local school and the state board of education, whether it's their district, but even the state board level. And we've done those episodes with the interviews for those people running for those seats. At the end of the day, if we let the powers that be just do it and we're not involved in it, then the system's never going to work out the way that it should. So
exactly right.
People getting involved, but thanks for sitting down with me on this.
You betcha. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm excited to see what the year has.
We're going to get you at career. We're going to have you for our career days. So we're going to bring you in as our podcaster now.
All right. Okay. All right.
I was going to pitch that before.
I don't know if I'm an expert at this, but I love teaching kids, man. I love teaching.
It's
kids,
a great day. It's a great day.
Fun.
We had a lot of people come in. We had ranchers. We had police officers. We had illustrators, it was really cool, and the kids rotate through. So we're going to get you there because
I love it. I'm definitely in. My favorite thing, and I tell my wife this all the time, and I still haven't done it this year yet, but we're only like 2 weeks in. Going to lunch with my sons, I feel like a celebrity because I know so many of the kids. So I walk in and they're like, hey. I was like, hey, guys. And I like sit down and everybody wants to talk to me. I was like, it's the funnest, like 20 minutes of my day. I always leave like just full of energy and joy, and like all the kids are having fun. It's so much fun.
Come on Orange Chicken Day.
Orange Chicken Day?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go Orange Chicken Day.
That's this. I've been talking to the kids, and that's a popular.
That's the popular day, huh?
Orange Chicken, and you got to look at like the 6th through 9th grade lunch. Like they're the like that's the litmus test, right?
That's when you know.
That's when you know. And the line was all the way across the blacktop.
That's so funny.
They were like Orange Chicken.
It's
Day.
Orange Chicken. We got to wait in line. But that's all right. It's worth it. That's cool.
So come on Orange Chicken Day, get some orange chicken. Yeah, that's another faction of that's another group of people that love what they do.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Like that's the cool thing about Vista is it's just there's just these collectives of different people around that schoolhouse that love what they do.
Yeah.
Right. Every day, bring it every day. And
it's a fun place.
And it's fun. It's fun to be a part. So, hey, this was awesome. And I'll definitely come back. Yeah.
So if somebody's wanting to do some research on Vista, is it vistaschool.com? I can't remember.
Vista Utah.
VistaUtah.com.
Yep. Check
And
us out.
we'll put the link in the description, but we hope you enjoyed this episode, everybody. We'll see you guys out there.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.